Okay, as we transition from Excel to Access, the key here to understand is that Access is a database. It's a relational database. And what we're talking about that is that there you can have data that is stored in multiple tables, and then you're going to relate those tables to each other to extract the data that you want. And one of the other important aspects of a relational database, that's how a relational database is. You store your data into smaller tables, and then you basically link the relationship together to extract that data. Now, sounds maybe a little confusing, but it's not that hard once we start looking at it. The second thing I want to understand is that all databases kind of work the same way. Most likely in your career, you might not be using Microsoft Access in the work world. If you're in the health field, you'll definitely use some other databases. Now, databases could be used for smaller companies, for hospitals, and that they're using databases that are already built, some based on what we call as Oracle and so forth. But the concepts are the same, and that's what I want you to get out of this. What is a query? What's a report? How do you design a table? Those are the concepts that you're going to be able to take and correlate and use Access as a learning tool to help you learn databases in general for that purpose. Okay. So as we work with Access, I just want you to keep understand that in this case we're working with what we call is really called a relational database. And again, as the book says, it's a collection of data in the database that you're storing in tables, and that you're going to be able to extract that information from those tables to bring the information you want in a report or a form for that purpose. And so as we're going in, we're looking at this. I'm going to open up this table, kind of get or Access to get an idea. Security risks, don't worry about block macros. We can set our settings to be lower for macros, so I'm just going to close that up here. What I want to look at here, because this already has tables, reports, queries, forms, and the key here is using Access to see that, for example, I'm going to double click on this success staff, and you can see that this is a table that stores the employee ID, their first name, their last name, their phone number, where they're located, and so forth. If I open up resource topics, it's just a list of resource topics that the student success staff uses for that purpose. So this, and if I open up resources, this also is talking about the different type of resources available for students and what type of format it's available and the length of it. So you can keep here, this looks like a spreadsheet. Now the problem with Excel does a great job creating what we call a flat database of information. Yeah, you can filter, you can sort, but to get a little more complicated results of creating a form or a report, this is where a database comes in play. So as we're doing here, you're going to see some of the stuff automatically set up that looks like a spreadsheet. And we can keep adding columns over here and adding rows if we wanted to. Now, a table is where you're going to store the data, and you have to design the table. If you don't design the table correctly, then you're not going to get the data that you want. Now, I'm just going to briefly talk about what else in the database that we have here. We have queries. Queries is going to ask a question and it's going to retrieve that information from the tables that you're asking. So basically, it's going to take a look at this. Maybe this table. It does say student resources by format, and it looks like it's sorting it by a certain format. So if I click on this, you can see that the format is by Office Virtual, and it's bringing this, it's sorted by a certain way. So if I look at student resources, notice though it's not bringing back all the columns either. It's only bringing out back what you want to see. So we can even go in and do a little more complicated queries. A simple query is just saying I want this field, and I want to sort it. I want to filter it out. Okay. A form is used to help fill out the data into a table. So instead of having a table and me going in and typing in the information here, Now you can see here, I typed in some things wrong, so come back in. We can actually put an input mask in, and that input mask will put the parentheses in for me. So when you're typing in new records one row at a time, you can get mistakes, and that's where forms come in play. So if I open up a form, it's going to basically do the same thing, but it's in a easier format to type in. As you can see here, here's a staff form, and so in this case all I have to do is click on new form, type in new ID, Mike Soliday. I forget the different, I'll just make up my own. Ibling. So what I'm doing here is I'm just have a different way to fill out the table. I don't see the rest of the table data. I don't need to see the rest of the table data for that purpose. Now here's the other beauty of the Access and any databases. Once you create the table and once you create the data, you don't have to click save. It automatically saves as you're typing in the data. Only time you need to click save is when you change the design of the table, the design of the form, design of the report, anything that has to do with design, that aspect, or you change the type of formatting, then you have to save. Other than that, when you're typing in data, it automatically saves, because would you imagine if you were typed in 100 records and you forgot to save and then something went wrong and you lost it? You have to type it all over again. So that's what a database does. And reports is just a formatted page, just like you think in Word. It's just a different list, and just like in this case, listing out the resource topics, listing out the names of the success staff and their phone numbers. Now, when again, this can be printed, so it's easily printed out and so forth.